effective techniques. So the problem you're not worth it. But you know, you don't have that wedge to enter into the system.
And so that's why narcissism is considered also a more primitive, right? It's like you missed development earlier on.
I'm not sure one is like primitive. It's risky territory.
Hello, hello, hello. I am Mr. J, Coach J. You can call me whatever you like. Just don't call me late for dinner. But I always like to start my classes with a little corny dad joke. I am a dad after all. And today's is this: what do you call a dog that can perform magic tricks? You call them a labracadabrador. But if you can take two deep healing breaths with me, preferably into the nose, out through the mouth, and with your eyes closed. However, any way that you feel most safe is fine. So we'll start with one. Okay, one more. Today I'm going to be talking about a general overview of the difference between NPD and BPD. That is narcissistic pers- um, personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. I'm just going to give you kind of like the basics, a general overview, like a 101 class. Keeping in mind, a lot of these traits do overlap, so it's very difficult when you're working with a client or if you are someone that might have both. I mean, even with what's another one, bipolar disorder, some of those could actually even overlap as well. So it can get a little confusing, and I just want to give you a general overview of the two. So basically, when you hear the term narcissist, what comes to mind? In everyday conversations, the world is often used in a negative, oversimplified way. But in the clinical setting, a narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, like I just said, is a legitimate mental health diagnosis that has serious effects on those who struggle with it, as well as their family and friends. Contrary to popular belief, not everybody is a narcissist. Yes, I'm, well, let me just say this. I believe the majority of us, if not all of us, are on some spectrum of at times display narcissistic traits or behavior. That doesn't mean that we have narcissistic personality disorder. I think nowadays, the minute we break up with somebody, we see a trait or two when there's actually, well, it depends on who you talk to. Half a dozen to a dozen traits that you have to actually meet the criteria for to be diagnosed by something. We just can't say, oh, I broke up with him because he was a narcissist or she was, this. Um, just because somebody has traits or some behavior of saying things does not mean that they are diagnosed as that. So we need to really be careful and not simplify certain things. The good news is that NPD is treatable, and understanding it better could help reduce stigma and promote more effective support for those affected. You can have a relationship with somebody who has NPD. You can. There's going to be trials, just like if you were with somebody that was diabetic. But you can with the proper support, the proper tools, and the proper education, and things like that. So, what is NPD or narcissistic personality disorder? So, NPD is a complex mental condition marked by a heightened sense of self importance, a constant need for admiration, and a profound lack of empathy. Now, those with NPD often display emotional patterns of grandiosity, entitlement, and a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, beauty, or ideal love. So, really, it would kind of make sense to understand at the very core, very core of somebody with NPD is a profound lack of confidence. That's what you're going to find. they will not come across that way. It's the opposite. But that's overcompensation. The DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, categorize NPD under a cluster B personality, which includes conditions and traits like dramatic, emotional, or erratic behavior, um, things like that, extremes. Left untreated, NPD can result in significant difficulties in relationships and work and just basically the person's overall well-being. NPD is often misunderstood and overgeneralized. I just said that. Every time we break up with somebody, we look back and we see a trait or two when there's really a half a dozen or a dozen that you need to meet the criteria to be legitimately diagnosable. But it is misunderstood and it certainly is overgeneralized and oversimplified. Myths and misconceptions can perpetuate stigma, leading to inaccurate portrayals of those affected, inadequate support, and missed opportunities for effective treatment. One of the things I want to say is for those watching this who have been in a relationship with somebody who has NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, it's a mind F. Like there's no other way to say that professionally. You are in a circus mentally with somebody. You're constantly gaslit, you're confused, you're like it, it, you are you're mind effed. I don't know what else to say. I mean, really, it's just it's if you're watching this and you've been with a diagnosed NPD and you're out of that relationship, I don't want to be, Debbie Downer, and I apologize if you're watching this, your name's Debbie. Um, you have a long journey of healing. You do. You were mind effed for a long time. So the reason I'm saying that is because when people get out of a relationship with somebody who maybe have had a behavior or a trait or two of NPD, if they say, "Oh yeah, my ex was narcissistic," you're really slapping people in the face who dealt with true narcissistic spouses and partners. So let's not be just so flippant when we say this. Let's take a closer look at what NPD really involves. So narcissistic personality disorder is far more than an occasional centeredness. And that's the thing. If somebody acts like, self-centered or selfish or whatever here and there periodically, even a lot of times, that could be a personality trait, not a diagnosable disorder. The DSM, like I said, 5 defines NPD as characterized by, and this is according to the DSM-5, the latest one, an exaggerated sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of success, power, beauty, or brilliance, a need for admiration and recognition, even without corresponding accomplishments, a tendency to exploit others to achieve personal goals. We see this a lot at the workplace. A lack of empathy and difficulty in recognizing or valuing the feelings and needs of others. Now, let me tell you something. If you are getting over a betrayal with somebody who has NPD, I don't want to say I'm speechless, but God bless you. Because they just lack empathy, and empathy is one of the main things. As a matter of fact, I have to take a sip of coffee. I mean, that was even heavy for me. NPDs lack empathy. And when you're talking to somebody who betrayed you, one of the key, vital, crucial elements that we need to feel is empathy. And when they simply can't give it because they have a diagnosed disorder where it's to understand that, I don't blame people that can't. I don't blame people that can't. It is almost a virtually impossible mountain to climb. People with NPD often crave admiration and praise, yet struggle to maintain meaningful relationships. They may feel entitled to special treatment and exhibit arrogance or haughty behavior. While they may appear confident or charming, and this is critical and crucial, while they may appear confident and charming, their interactions with others are often superficial and based on a transactional need for validation. So a lot of times, if somebody that's NPD is going to be doing something nice, I'm not saying always, but usually it's because it's for selfish purposes. And you're like, well, wait a minute, Mr. J, how in the world is that? Well, it's because let me do for you because I'm going to get something out of it, not because of, as a matter of fact, actually, no, I'm not going to go there. I was going to give you an example of something, but I'll trail off. And next thing you know, it'll be next Tuesday and you'll still be in class. Um, this is another reason why people with NPD you will find often get into affairs because affairs are a drug of choice where you're seeking validation and affirmation. And so people with NPD that have an endless need for that will often go outside a relationship because that's what they need. And then if they're talking to the partner that they hurt and the partner's like, I need you to understand how you hurt me, whatever. No, not there. This is what I mean. It's almost an impossible mountain to climb. All right, the spectrum of narcissism. It's important to understand that narcissism exists on a spectrum. At one end, there's a healthy self confidence, a balanced self of self worth, and the ability to handle criticism and build meaningful relationships. On the other end, you have pathological narcissism where behaviors are so extreme that they disrupt daily life and hinder emotional connection with others. And like I said, this also gets overlaps into the workplace. Now, let me tell you something. There's probably some fields out there, and I'm not going to state them. You can probably think of them. There's probably a lot of fields out there where if you're a narcissist, you probably excel in that field. So, if there's a cutthroat field, if you have narcissistic personalities or traits or even NPD disorder, um, you probably excel in those fields. It doesn't mean that it's healthy. It means that you excel in it. And let me just say this just as a side note. This is a disorder. So yes, people that have NPD, and if you're watching and you've been with them, of course you're hurt. You're devastated. You're mind effed for a long time, and you're pissed. You're profoundly changed. So much about your confidence is shook to the core. But please keep in mind, I'm not saying this as an excuse at all. Please keep in mind, if they have true NPD, that is a disorder. It's like any other disorder. So, yes, behaviorally speaking, they're buttholes. You can say that, and they're jerks and all that stuff. But keep in mind, it is a diagnosable disorder. So, I guess what I'm saying is, don't make excuses for anyone, still hold them accountable, whatever, but simply try to understand this is a diagnosable disorder. It's not like somebody um, just as being selfish or self centered. This is a disorder that has deep roots, none of which I'm going to get into in this class. Um, healthy and self-belief. Individuals with a balanced self-esteem are capable of empathy, self-reflection, and a form of meaningful, lasting relationships. They can accept constructive criticism, and learn from it. Um, like I said, that's something that NPD is really not going to be capable of. It's not that they don't want to; they're just not capable of it. Um, Subclinical narcissism. So some people may show narcissistic tendencies, such as a desire for attention or admiration, but they don't meet the clinical threshold for NPD. And this is where a lot of people watching will fall. Um, there's narcissistic behavior in your relationships, of course, because I believe probably in our lifetime we all display behavior and traits of narcissism, but it's subclinical. It's not diagnosable. There's also malignant narcissism. And what malignant narcissism is at the extreme end of the spectrum is malignant narcissism, which combines NPD with antisocial behaviors, paranoia, aggression. Malignant narcissists show a profound lack of empathy and may actually harm others and with no remorse. And this is what really makes somebody think you are psychotic. Get the blank out of my house. Get it? All right, so let's move a little bit more into NPD and BPD. Now, NPD, which is, as you know, now borderline personality disorder, BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, they're both cluster B disorders, but they're a little different from one another. So basically, NPD, as we know, themselves, they feel they are superior and primarily focused on gaining admiration and recognition. They exploit relationships to achieve their goals and often lack empathy. And like I said, this works nicely in the workplace. Now, BPD is characterized by intense emotional instability, um, fear of abandonment. And this is what's interesting. NPDs and BPDs, even though one of them lacks empathy and the other one has a fear of abandonment, they're often attracted to one another. They often connect with one another. And what happens is NPDs will have this very blase attitude, and they don't really have a lot of remorse, and they lack empathy, whatever. And then somebody with BPD who has a constant need for not to feel abandoned. It's a cycle of harm, but yet these two people often come together. Um, People with BPD may experience intense mood swings, depression, and anxiety, often triggered by perceived rejection or abandonment. And I say perceived because this is a part of the um, issue that they deal with, is that things go through their own filter, gets interpreted, and then they feel something as real, which may not necessarily be real. NPD is generally marked by a need for admiration and control, whereas BPD revolves around emotional volatility and difficulty maintaining stable interpersonal relationships. Debunking common myths about NPD. There are several misconceptions about NPD that continue to that that continue to mislead and continue to lead to misunderstandings and prejudice. Let's address some of the most prevalent myths when it comes to NPD. Number one, narcissists are just self-centered and egotistical. No, NPD is simply, it's just not an exaggerated form of self-centeredness. It's a pervasive pattern of behavior that affects an individual's emotional regulation, their relationships, and their overall sense of self. You know, I don't know if you're going to read this or hear this anywhere, but people with NPD, even though they come across as this grandiose king or queen, um, and yes, it is very prevalent with women too, contrary to popular belief. At their core, they're not tremendously happy. Um, all right, and like I said, you may or may not read that anywhere. This is just my own thoughts, having worked with people with these diagnoses. Narcissists are always successful and charismatic. That is a myth. You know, while some individuals with narcissistic personality disorder may be charming or successful in certain contexts, many struggle with emotional turmoil, work instability, and interpersonal challenges. And let me just say something based on this myth. This is why so many people initially get mind effed, because when they're with somebody initially, then they don't know that they have narcissistic personality disorder. They think they found their knight in shining armor. They think that, my God, this person is so charming. Like I won the relationship jackpot. This person could never even possibly hurt me. This person is just like, my gosh, they came in on a white horse. Um, and then all of a sudden their true self shows, and you're just like, well, geez, was it me? Is it my fault they changed? Am I such a bad person I turned them into a monster? And trust me, they'll make you believe that. All right. Myth three, NPD is incurable. No, many believe that people with narcissistic personality disorder cannot change, but this is absolutely not true. Through treatment, it's challenging, obviously, but through treatment, psychotherapy, including, like, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. They can help individuals manage their symptoms and improve their emotional regulation. There are medications also out there for this. And if they help, they help, but usually CBT and DBT are some and believe it or not, journaling. I found journaling. I don't have either of these. Trust me, I have my own things. I don't have either of those, but I have found when I suggested journaling with some people that has helped um, uh, considerably. I mean, it's on a spectrum how much it helps, but When you're diagnosed with something, I say turn every stone to see what helps. You never know. I never know if you watch that movie Lorenzo's Oil, but sometimes it's like really long trial and error of really getting what's necessary and needed for your unique disorder. Causes and risk factors of NPD. Like many mental health conditions, NPD can stem from a combination of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. While no single cause can be pinpointed, the following are contributing factors of maybe what how somebody can get NPD and BPD. So basically, genetics. Some individuals may have a genetic predisposition to developing a personality disorder, such as NPD. Obviously, childhood and developmental experiences, early trauma, neglect, overly critical parenting, that could all shape a child's emotional development, contributing to narcissistic traits. Overpraise is another one, which is just as unhealthy. Overpraise or exposure to narcissistic behaviors in parents may also lead to unhealthy patterns of self-worth. A lot of times, if you meet somebody who has NPD, um, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there's a decent chance one of their parents has those displays that as well. Now, don't get me wrong. You also have children that are like, because I was raised by somebody NPD, I am so aware and mindful of that. I will never act like that. Treatment options for people that are NPD. Psychotherapy is one of the most effective treatments for NPD. Like I said, cognitive behavioral therapy helps, and DBT helps. Like I said, there is medication. There's no technically there's no medication from my understanding. Studies are coming out all the time, but there's no medication that directly treats NPD. Again, by the end of this class, maybe there will be, so don't hold me to that. But there are some medications where people that have NPD can benefit from taking, especially dealing with some of the symptoms. And some of those symptoms could even be like depression, anxiety, things like that. If you deal with some of the root of NPD, that might help you address some of the more prominent, overt traits and behaviors. And obviously, don't discount the support networks. Like building strong supports can help individuals with NPD, even BPD. They can feel understood and encouraged. This can include friends, family, support groups, coworkers, what have you. Keep in mind, people. I just want to give you a couple more things with BPD, borderline personality disorders. People with BPD can have highs. They can have highs and they can have lows. Um, NPD can too, but it's more personality. That's just who they are, NPD. Where people with BPD usually have highs and lows, almost like bipolar. People with bipolar. People with borderline personality disorder, like they fear abandonment. I think I mentioned that. When people with NPD, maybe at their core, of course, but they're certainly not going to show it. Um, uh, People with borderline personality disorders. There's just some differences. But like I said, the main thing is if you are with somebody like this, it completely changes your way of thinking. And you really, if you have been with somebody that has had these diagnoses, you really need to seek help yourself, because it's almost like you drank uh what do you call that stuff you put in a car radiator? Radiator fluid, duh. There's poison in your body. You got to get rid of it. Your mind was poisoned if you're with somebody who has these traits or has a diagnosable disorder. You really need to see a professional to undo a lot of the complexities and the tightly wound up ball of confusion that they left you with. Um, all right, narcissistic personality disorder is a serious medical condition, but it's treatable, like I just said. But by moving beyond stereotypes and educating ourselves about NPD and BPD, we can create a more supportive and empathetic environment for those that are affected. Um, Keep in mind too, like for instance, people I think with BPD, borderline personality disorder, one of the things they might actually do is cut themselves for various reasons. It's a form of self-harm. Could be for a high. So a support system around them is crucial, vital, critical. Promoting mental health awareness not only helps those understand NPD and BPD, but it also fosters a culture of understanding that benefits us all. You know, keep in mind, I just want to say this, and I tell people like this all the time, with diagnosable behaviors. And even if behaviors aren't diagnosable, they're still present, and they're present for a reason. You know, childhood trauma, childhood neglect, abandonment, genetic factors, um, pre and overexposure to whatever it is, overly praising parents or under praising parents. But one of the things I want to say is, and I know this is a tough pill to swallow because you're angry, you're hurt, you're sad, you're afraid because you were hurt. I get it. But keep in mind, at bottom line, these things are diagnosable issues, and there's reasons behind them, very sad reasons behind them. For example, I talk with a lot of people that are sex addicts, a lot of people that have sex addiction. And when you talk to their partner, it's like, wow, it must be nice. They go out and they do this and they have sex and they're no, 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 no. Anything that controls you is not nice, is not a happy life. It controls you. NPD controls you. BPD controls you. Addiction controls you. So, yes, these people hurt you. Or if you're watching this and you have these things, you hurt people. Um, but obviously, if you're watching this and you have one of these diagnosable things, you were very hurt, which is why some of these things show themselves. And if you're watching this and you're on the other side of this, you're with somebody who is an addict or bipolar or narcissistic, whatever, you've been profoundly affected. And both people, I hope, try to have some understanding of the other. But more important, don't let the sun go down today without doing something about it. Have a great day.